The market's uncertain, revenue's tight, and hiring on hold. That's why results-driven companies are using Upwork to keep work moving. Go to Upwork.com today and start hiring proven freelance talent fast. No bulky overhead. No rigid long-term contracts. Just the right expert right when you need them. Work smarter and faster with Upwork. Go to Upwork.com now and find your freelance expert. That's UPWORK.com. Post a job for free and get started today.
In too many Chicago neighborhoods, access to fresh food is a luxury, not a given. Gardeneers is working to change that by supporting school garden programs that empower students to grow their own produce, learn about nutrition, and fight back against systemic food injustice. These aren't just gardens, they're pathways to health, education, and equity. Learn how you can help at gardeneers.org. Let's grow food justice in Chicago together.
Hi guys, welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones. I'm your podcast host, Tony Evans. Thank you for bearing with me. This is an episode that should have come out previous week, but with life's little ups and downs, sadly, I could only sort of put up a best of, and it, gladly I got a good sense of response back from people, so I'm really happy with that. Anyway, this week's episode, as advertised a couple of weeks ago, is Possessed's first and most influential album, Seven Churches. I apologise for keep calling it Seven Gates in all of my other advertising. It's because I've been listening to their second album, Beyond the Gates, and I added seven and then seven gates, and seven gates of hell, and look, you get crossover in old man's brain, and that's what happens. Anyway, we're going to talk about Possessed. Now, the reason I want to bring Possessed up is that I managed to interview Jeff Becerra, the lead singer and bass player from the band, a few weeks ago for Metal Ruse, the home of all your metal needs, and such a really nice guy, and he's playing in Canberra in a few weeks' time. I thought with Possessed, and I thought, wow, I haven't talked about this, because I've talked about death metal before, and I've talked about black metal, and I've sort of scooted over Possessed's sort of what they actually are and why they're important to the death metal scene. But here is actually the most important thing, because they genuinely are considered by most right-thinking metal enthusiasts and music historians as the first true death metal band. They come from the Bay Area in America, in San Francisco, where the home of extreme metal, really, in the sort of American extreme metal begins, where your thrash starts, where death metal starts. This is a very important scene that is beloved to most people. Metallica, Exodus, Testament, Death Angel, they all started in that area. Now, the thing about Possessed is that they were on those borderline, they were sort of the wild frontier of death metal, of music, because they were what I'd like to call, and I've often said, our generation's punk music, because it was different, scary to the normal people, even to some of the metal community. It was worrying. It was so far different and so far removed from what people were listening to at the time. I mean, thrash had been around, and it certainly was around for some time, but the death metal a la Forbidden's Seven Churches changed even their sound, right? So when it sort of evolved around this one band, and when I think about it, they were school children when they made this. They were all they all come from the same high school year. The band originated, as I said, in San Francisco Bay Area in 1982. When San Pablo and El Sabranto residents Mike Taro, and I know if I've said that spelling it correct, it's Torrao, so Taro I'm going to say, and Mike Suss. So Mike Taro on guitar, Mike Suss on drums, started a garage band with vocalist Barry Fisk and former Exodus bass player Jeff Andrews under the name Possessed. While the quartet had begun writing some music together, the lineup would be cut short when Fisk committed suicide. I'm sorry, I should have really mentioned that at the beginning, that there will be mentions of suicide in this episode. But yes, he sadly drove to the front of his girlfriend's house in Tara Hills, California, and decided to end his life with a gun. Subsequently, Jeff Andrews decided that he'd had enough. He wouldn't participate in the group any longer. And, this is, again, not full history. This is only a rumor of the reason why he left the band. Okay. Meanwhile, bassist and vocalist Jeff Porcaro had recently split from his band Blizzard in the neighboring city of Pinola. The band included Larry LaLonda. Now, Larry LaLonda would go on to do amazing stuff with Primus, so brilliant guitarist. Danny Boland on guitars and Larry LaLonda, and Michael Miner on drums, all of whom were high school students in the same graduating class. So amazing, consider these were high school students creating this interesting music from a really sort of quiet backwater kind of little town. Certainly not at the big city as you would imagine it to be. After being approached by Taro and Suss, Porcaro joined Possessed, filling both the vacant vocal and bass positions. And when I was talking to Jeff about this, he said he would get his vocal style by singing in the bathroom, in the shower, like the grunting and the growling, and his poor mother would be like, and grandmother would be like, "What are you doing?" And he'd be like, I'm singing," and it wasn't anything they'd actually ever really heard, because he was the first person to have the deaf growls and the real snarls and the almost unaudible vocals, to which really did give him some very big backlash. As I said before, this was something that hadn't really been done, so different to everything else. The band placed an advertisement for a new guitarist, which was responded by Brian Montana. Then it became the second incantation of Possessed. Possessed spent 1983 and 1984 participating and working on their ground and their sound by performing at local venues and becoming an active part of the Bay Area thrash scene. As I said, they started off as a thrash scene, but they really cemented their sound through their own direction. They were very one-sided, very, very focused. They recorded a 3-demo song called tape called Death Metal in 1984. After concerts with Metallica and Exodus, the latter group brought the band's demo recording to the attention of Brian Slagle, head of Metal Blade Records, which is, everyone knows Metal Blade Records. Slagle himself showed interest in the band and offered them to put their song Swing of an Axe on the up-and-coming compilation Metal Massacre 6. I think I've got that somewhere on vinyl. I'm sure I do, or cassette. I know I do somewhere. Following the release of this compilation, guitarist Brian Montana left the band due to creative differences. Again, this is all hearsay, and was replaced by Blizzard guitarist Larry LaLonda. According to Montana, he said he left the band because Taro had a terrible attitude problem and wouldn't stop ragging at him. He was like some senile old lady that just wouldn't shut up, he said. He had a problem with my image. He didn't think I was evil enough or anything. He always was raging on me to wear an upside-down crucifix and be satanic. Again, this is a band, we'll talk about influences later on in this episode, but this was a time when, we had the video nasty boom in the UK and the satanic panic problem in America, where, when you're pushing boundaries to shock the normal people of society, there's only so much you can do. Punk had already pushed it so far. Where else do you go? Heavy metal was relatively clean and respectable at that point in 84, 85. So, in such a way that it wasn't, unless you were in the underground, it was quite radio friendly in some respects. So you have to push in a direction is going to turn heads and upset people. And in America, it's Christianity, and Satanism is something that's still very feared over there in a very Christian, monotheistic society. So, he left. And so Larry Lalonde, as I said, who went to school with the other boys, who went on to join Primus, completely different sound if you think about it to what he makes, the sound he makes here. The band hired a Mechanics Bank heiress, Debbie Abono. Now, Debbie Abono, interesting lady. She had no idea about what the band did, what their lyrics were about. She didn't really... Very Christian woman. She was from Oakland, California, an heiress. And she, her Larry Lalonde's girlfriend, she was the daughter of Deborah. And Deborah was brought to the attention of the band, and they asked her to manage them because I can imagine having that much money as well. She didn't know much about the blasphemous themes and the heavy metal antics that Seven Churches album was about. Nevertheless, she agreed to continue managing Possessed on the condition that Lalonde and vocalist Jeff Becerra would finish high school. And that, that's a fair enough thing, isn't it? Because Possessed suffered from internal conflicts. Abono would go on to manage additional bands in the Bay Area like Exodus, Violence, and Forbidden. And again, also Broken Hope, Cynic, Obituary, and even Sepultura. She died in 2010 at the age of 80, so she had a good life, and she did bring us, thankfully, those big names to our ears. Maybe they never would have come around otherwise. Yeah. The compilation drew the attention of Combat Records, who signed the band and released their debut album, Seven Churches, with Roadrunner handling the European distribution. In November of the same year, the band flew to Montreal, Canada for the World War III weekend festival to support Seven Churches' release, playing alongside Celtic Frost, Destruction, Voivod, and Nasty Savage. I talked to Nasty Savage earlier in the year, and I didn't actually realise that they'd played on that venue with those bands, so quite amazing, really. The concert was Possessed's first and largest arena appearance, with nearly 7,000 in attendance. Possessed followed the release with a supporting tour, which included performances with Slayer and Venom at the San Francisco Kabuki in 1986. Now, talking of that, of the interview, I don't want to ruin the interview that's going to come out, but those of you who want to listen to it when it does come out, I chatted to Jeff about that, and he was saying how him and Kirk Hammett were, I think it was Kirk Hammett he mentions, were backstage, high up in the arena watching Venom and thinking, how are we going to top that? This is just absolute noise. And it just apparently really pushed them to go beyond that their sound that they're normally, go and push beyond. And so they did. They went on to make, sadly, only 2 other albums in this era, with first being Beyond the Gates and then Eyes of Horror. But it is what it is, right? Sometimes in music, like the Pistols with Nevermind the Bollocks, when you're that creative. So the third album was Revelations of Oblivion in 2019. The other one was an EP, sorry. You sort of... Eyes of Horror was an EP in 1987 on Combat Records, and then there was 2006 Ashes from Hell and 2019 Shadow Cult, their EPs. But when you're that kind of creative, that kind of interesting characters, I can't imagine ever, hand on heart, thinking the Pistols would ever make a great second album. I just don't know if they would. It's very much like Possessed with these 2 albums. They sort of came out and just blitzed everyone and changed everything. Now, the musical styles and influences, as I was talking about before, let's talk about that. At least 4 Possessed members who had written and recorded with the band at some point, vocalist, bassist Becerra, and former guitarist Taro, Montana, and Lalonde, cited early Exodus and Venom as their main influences, in addition to new wave of British heavy metal acts like Motorhead, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and bands as far as Rush, Scorpions, and Van Halen. And of course, people do think that they were sort of being influenced by Slayer with their first record Show No Mercy, but actually while they were recording Seven Churches, that's when Show No Mercy came out. So they hadn't actually heard it. So it's sort of, there are people that say, were they copying? Were they first? Were they not? There's a lot of, in the air, and I'm sure people are going to listen to this and say, Tony, I know this isn't correct. This is correct. There's always different ways of thinking about it. But the literature that I've been reading, it says that they had not been released until December '83. This is Show No Mercy, while the band were still recording the album. They were just gone in to record it. So, was it influenced? Who knows? I mean, lyrically, obviously, most of their songs are focused on Satanism and death. Certainly no shock there. They're often cited as the first death metal band, as I mentioned before, largely because of the use of guttural vocals, ultra-fast drumming, and tremolo picking. And I never really thought that tremolo picking was sort of there. I always thought went straight into black metal, comes from there. But when you listen to this album back again, you sort of get that sense. The band's influenced bands like Death, Pestilence, Sepultura, Deicide, Morbid Angel, Sadistic Incent, Cannibal Corpse, Gorguts, Vader, Amon Amarth even, God Dethroned, quite a few bands. Napalm Death being another one who cite them as their direction going from a hardcore band or grindcore band to a death metal band after the album Scum. So, Dimmu Borgir, Rotting Christ, they all have pointed at this album as an influence to them. And so it's quite fascinating that it's one of those albums or one of those bands that, why are they not as big as Metallica? Why are they not selling stadiums? Why are they, like I was talking to Jeff about it, how, he's struggled because he's decided this is what he wants to do, and they don't make millionaire. He's not a millionaire. He has to work for a living outside of recording. This is really quite a sad state of affairs when I look at it. It's what's for me one of the saddest things about the underground scene and music like Jeff's, Anyway, it's here. Guttural vocals, tremolo pickings, fast blast beats, satanic imagery, lo-fi recording. This is the kind of music that you would put on and it would scare your neighbours if you played it loud enough back in 1984 and 85. This is the kind of music that straddles the boundary of good taste and what is acceptable. And as I keep saying often and often and often enough, that stare into the void, there is a beauty that will stare back. In the blackness, there is beauty. And sometimes it's hard to see. Sometimes it comes at you and it's, blindingly obvious. But here, this one, you have to work with this album. It will take over you. Once you've listened to it a few times, if you are going to, you'll notice that it has some musical sort of synergy with lots of stuff you're listening to now, particularly those listening to this show that are into their extreme metal. You'll hear its DNA and fingerprints over everything. It really is amazing. On the second side of the show today, we're going to talk about the actual album itself, the tracks and the sounds and the music and all that sort of thing. But before we get there, again, as a treat, instead of any ads this time around, we're going to have Heads for the Dead. Now, everyone knows Heads for the Dead. If you listen to my show, it's one of my favourite bands around. They're a German band fronted by Ralph Hauber, who fronts Rot Pit and Revel in Flesh. I love Heads for the Dead because they make horror-themed death metal. I think this is why this is actually a really good fit for the show. And here, debuting the new single Phantasmagoria, which comes from the album that's coming out on October the 10th, Never-Ending Night of Terror, out on Pulverized Records. I've got mine coming. I cannot wait. Already got a new shirt with some of the new art on it. It's fantastic. This is some of the most premier death metal there is around, so please do enjoy it. Those that are not into this kind of sound, please do feel free to skip past. I hope you don't. I really hope you don't. Do listen to it, because I think you might find that you'll enjoy it as much as I do, particularly if you love your horror movies. But anyway, enough for me. Here's Heads for the Dead and Phantasmagoria. See you on the other side. Bye for now. Welcome back, guys. That was Heads for the Dead's Phantasmagoria, the latest single from their fantastic new album that is out on the 10th uh, of October, The Never Ending Night of Terror, their fourth studio album. I cannot wait. They're such nice people that make that music, such interesting characters to talk to, and, perfect fit for the album that we're talking about. Now, this is a good option to a time to say this option, blah blah blah. Time to say this. Music like we've just listened to, Phantasmagoria, Heads for the Dead, bands like that, Rock Pit, Heads for the Dead, Revel in Flesh, all those kind of bands really wouldn't exist in one form or another without bands like Possessed, because Possessed brought horror movie themes into a whole new genre of its own, death metal, right? So there was horror movie themes in thrash, but thrash is more of a, apart from, say, Slayer, it's much more of a party kind of, I think anyway. There's a lot of fun and colour and cartoonishness in some of the sort of more palatable thrash music. Of course, there are different levels of thrash now, as black and thrash, death thrash, there's all sorts. But back then it was pretty straightforward, cut and dry, and this is the good example of what we wouldn't have had without bands like Possessed. So Possessed released their album, as I said, Seven Churches, which is a quote from the Bible, I do believe. Don't ask me exactly, because I'm not going to get it right. But it is a quote from the Bible, nevertheless. That is my understanding, anyway. After deep consideration and pausing, they didn't even know it was a pause, it's the Book of Revelation, I believe. Not Revelations, as people get wrong, but Revelation, the Book of Revelation, that has the seven churches in it. Anyway, not going to go on about Bibles, not know much about them, just know that that's where it's from. So, the album itself, made on a shoestring budget, with all the enthusiasm and passion that teenagers will bring to their music. This is an album that really is it connects the dots between thrash metal and death metal as Seven Churches. It's really a line in the sand, as I like to always say, an overused metaphor. It really is. It's the most frantic thrash metal that brought into levels of extremity, is what people said. So it took it from the most frantic point to this areas which you couldn't keep up with it. These guys were high school kids, as I said. This is such an interesting, same way the Pistols were only teenagers when they made Nevermind the Bollocks. I know I keep on about the connecting them together, but for me they're very much similar in their connections, right? Other bands which have also, interestingly enough, have cited Possessed as an influence is as different as someone like Stephen Wilson from Porcupine Tree, and from his solo work and from lots of other things, has cited an influence on some of the darker stuff he likes to play. It's also considered one of the first albums in the genre. Ronnie James Dio, ex-Dio and ex-Black Sabbath, also said that they introduced them, sometimes this introduced them into the extreme metal scene. So it's a personal recommendation from a lot of people. I personally absolutely love it. Anyway, where do we start? So it's not a big, crackingly long album. Came out the 1st of January 1985. It's got the wonderful Possessed logo on the front, just clearly says, with the Possessed sign with the inverted cross under the P. It's a really very much that early form of, you can imagine teenagers quickly, frantically scrabbling down something that would offend everyone. It's got the little tail, devil's tail, flicking around from under the P, and white inverted cross under the O, and then it's got seven churches in a sort of stylized, almost Middle Eastern kind of Chinese writing style. It's really there to offend all of the Christian moralities and morals of of society. And as Jeff said, he's not against monotheistic single religions, not against religion in general. He's just against what it represents and what it is abuse of, the abuse of it itself. Well, no, it's a whole different conversation. We don't really want to go down that route because I never get off it. Anyway, the album is the 1st of January 1984. It came out. 10 songs, 39 minutes long. There are reversions of it. There are all sorts of things out there. I'd highly recommend hunting down the original version before you're listening to reissues and remixes and all that sort of stuff. Just listen to it in its purest form. If you're lucky like me to have it on vinyl from back that time, even better. If not, you can hunt it down relatively easy. There'll have been lots of repressings of it in the past, but it's true extreme at its best, I think, this one. So it opens with The Exorcist, and as I said before, after the Heads for the Dead single in our break, it's one of the first bands to use a horror movie theme in a real major way, and a sort of a bastardization of the Tubular Bells, the Mike Oldfield Tubular Bells track used for the very iconic music soundtrack for The Exorcist. He was telling me that it was quite difficult to do because of copyright and things, so they had to sort of rejig it a bit. And as soon as you hear it, you know it's the Exorcist, right? Straight away, it's stark and it's cold and it's noise. It's almost out of control. The music on this single, it's really chaotic. This is where we first hear Jeff. I would say open his voice, but he actually closes it off and it's quite growly, and he's trying to be as dark and as demonic and as evil as he can sound. And it's quite interesting because he's not that kind of guy, right? It's such a contrast to who Jeff really is, but it is a lovely way that he does it because, again, young, no knowledge, no understanding, didn't realize how much it was going to fuck his voice. It clearly did for some time, as he said to me outside of recording that it really hurt him for a while. It's quite dangerous. It's subversive. It has, for me, there are two voices in extreme metal early extreme metal that sort of pinpoint exactly where you are in time. There's Kronos' voice with Venom, and then there is Jeff's voice with Possessed, and those two really synchromesh. Nice word, isn't it? They synchromesh. They join together in such a way that they're almost you could almost play them on the same album and think they're really rough, almost the same people. It's that kind of brilliance, really, really like it. Now, what a way to open the album. These songs are not very long. Okay, lyrically, Jeff said he's not going out there to write poetry. He's not trying to be Keats or Wordsworth. He's not trying to be Lennon and McCartney. This was just in your face, dark, black, offensive lyrics. You know what I mean? This isn't something to sit around and try and work out exactly what he meant. Okay, I mean, you've got the lyrics, like, I'm going to give you just examples of a couple of the lyrics from each of the song, or maybe even here, you'll get the idea. It says, possessed by evil, hell, Satan's wrath will kill. We will take your soul, cast you to hell. It says what it is. It's meant to be about the Exorcist, which is the stealing of a young girl's soul. Right? Demon dog's domain, keeping me insane. Evil curse my soul, burning away. Satan's hell will burn. Terrored cries are heard. Everlasting eternity, warriors of hell. This is not, he said, it's not high art. Right? Your curse is not my fear. Demons within me here. I will escape your wrath. 666. All right. I mean, it goes on with the same kind of thing. Exorcism takes control beneath my body. Help my soul. Save my soul from evil hell. Your spell is lost. In the mix with the tritone guitars and the extreme blast beat drums, which is what this music is sort of really known for. It's quite cold, chaotic, and chaos. This is what it is. I mean, if you like your music like me, chaotic and noisy, sometimes, then this is the way to go. All right. There's sort of it's quite interesting actually. There is some sort of jazz fusion, sort of a diabolic prog almost in some of this stuff. It's face melting molten heavy metal, really is. Not for the like faint-hearted, possibly not for the beginner. So if you're, if you didn't quite enjoy Heads for the Dead's song in our break, then maybe this album might be not for you. But hey, if you're a lover of the history of metal, then this might be perfect for you. The next track is Pentagram. This is the one where the growl really sits in. This is where the growl takes over. It really sort of is like the belly of Beelzebub, Belial, the way that he really growls this one out. It's the one the most influenced by Venom, I think, musically and stylistically. As I said, it has a kind of strange jazz prog infusion to it, and I really love the way that this song jumps from The Exorcist and to the next one, Burning Hell, all very considered, almost like a tritone of story, as we'll find out later on. He doesn't like to do. He likes to do albums that can be played individually, not all the way through, live, and he likes to have a bit of a story on some of his music, which we're getting from here because you have the devil taking over the soul of the victim, and then you have here Pentagram, which is again a lot more Venom-like. But this one is very much reminds me of stuff from At War with Satan. It's more proggy, as I said. The lyric here is, "There's a sacred city not far from here, where the earth is bare and the sky is black. Tormented souls are stricken with fear, and the sinners all know where there's no way back. Fly into the pentagram. There's a lot you want to see. Sacrifice the crying ram and drink the blood with me. Giant kingdom down below, where the Lord of Darkness sits and waits for a poor lost mortal to come in when he lowers down his gates." So actually one of my favourite lyrics on the album, and very much, as I said, a very Venom-influenced, more wordy, probably the most wordy lyric on the album. I genuinely love it because it does give that sense of a story which you get with Seven Gates of Hell. Not Seven Gates, sorry, I apologise. With At War with Satan. And this was that where they are sort of wrestling with their influences here. And then barreling on after this, again, motif-wise, the guitars are chaos, the drums are chaotic. I mean, musically, you're not going to get much difference between each track. It is a very similar sounding album in a very good way, as we spoke about before, having the underlying motif where then influences drum guitars and lyrical content and vocal storylines and things like that can play in and out around there, As I said, now next comes Burning in Hell. Burning in Hell. Okay. This one carries on with the same guitar themes. So throughout the album, the motif of the music's very similar, which some people say could be a little bit one-dimensional. I disagree. I think the fact that the music's motifs are similar allows the themes above that motif to explore different avenues. It takes the pressure off of having to be musically creative every moment. If you've got the same motif flowing underneath, it's like an undercoat of a paint, right? It helps the colours glow above. So it sort of lets the artist be more free. And I think this is what they're doing with the same kind of, musical motif. Yes, it's tritone guitars. Yes, it's cold tremolo picking. Yes, it's blast beats and growly vocals and, crazy bass parts. But, as I said, it lets the rest of it flow on top. All right. Now, again, there's lots of chugging guitar in this track. It's not always atonal noise. There is some classic heavy metal in the mix because they are fans of the new wave of British heavy metal bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, as we said. The naivety on this album is something that is very special. I think the naivety of the music itself, underneath the really clever guitar by Lalonda, and the vocal annihilation by Jeff is, I don't know, it sort of adds to a playfulness, a childishness of which you get. And Burning in Hell has that all over. It's not much of a jump from The Exorcist to Burning in Hell musically. And lyrically is not much this different either, really. You know, it sort of, it follows on the same theme. You know, you've got death has beckoned you to hell, you can't escape my evil spell. Past the gates, evil fate, into the depths cast to burn, unseen terror, life of doom, tragic black magic. Sorrow in the afterlife, victim of your sins, tonight my grasp will last. Nightmares of eternity, forgotten souls and tyranny, you live, now die. So you can see how it follows on from The Exorcist, right? The soul has been stolen. I mean, he did say that this album, he's not a huge fan of albums that get played from beginning to end. You know, he's not how he likes to listen, how he wants to play music. But he's going to be playing it from beginning to end for us here in Australia on the tour, and I'm very excited by that. Anyway, you can see it sort of has a storyline. You know, you've got the devil possessing the victim in Exorcist, and then now the soul is in hell. All right. Prowling through the night like a bad dream, stalking out your prey, hear the victim scream. Driven by the vision, ruling your domain, lurking in the shadows, driving you insane. So this is actually more by the book lyrically than The Exorcist as a track. It's a little bit more, you know, has a bit of a more scan, a little bit more rhythm to the lyric, but it's still as dark as they come. So great track to follow on. All right. Now, I've said earlier in the episode that it has a very similar sound right way through, but I sort of contradict myself here slightly because Evil Warriors, which is the next track up, is just 110% pure chaos from the moment the first note tumbles or screams or butchers its way out of your speakers through your ears and out of your eye sockets or wherever orifice might open at the time. It is noise, but beautiful noise. It's chaos, but crazy chaos. It's the kind of chaos that I really love when I very first heard bands like UKDK, Extreme Noise Terror, GBH, all those kind of bands that were just sort of Onslaught, bands like that. The sort of bands that just butcher the energy. It's such an addictive energy. There is almost not a time for you to understand the lyric. It's just so intense. It's actually quite wordy, this particular track. When you wake up in the night and you stare into the dark, your eyes will scream for sight. Evil will left his mark. You'll be looking all above, looking all around, but if you want to see them, you have to look down. Tortured by thoughts, stricken by fear, blasted to hell, and the end is near. As you wait upon your fate, your throat is full of pain, and when you try to scream, you know it's all in vain. Nothing you can change, destiny is complete. Silence seems so strange as you start to feel the heat. It's, again, probably some of the most poetic lyrics on the album. Forever to burn infinite pain, demons of darkness and warriors domain. You think you're so secure, protected from above. Gaze into the hellfire, you'll know you'll fall in love. They'll hunt you down at night, your flesh is where they want. Your eyes will scream for sight when the evil comes to haunt. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Because you are not going to hear that lyric in this song. Jeff almost outdoes himself in inaudibility in this particular track, but I love it for that fact. It's 3 minutes long. They all don't last. They're not all that large, but my God, they do smack you around the face. And following really quickly on that is a title track, Seven Churches. This one is one of my, I keep saying one of my favorites. It genuinely is. I think it's in that top 3 on this album. You know, Pentagram, Exorcist, Satan, and Seven Churches sort of mix themselves up in my favorite songs on the album. They sort of move around, but this actually is a really, again, this isn't going to philosophically change your mind and make you suddenly become a Satanist. This is pure entertainment. This is pure shock value, just the way that a good horror movie is, just the way that a good thriller novel is, just the way that Alice Cooper was, and people like that, right? This isn't fine art. This is rock and roll at its very, very essence, and very much like At War with Satan, the extreme metal prog album masterpiece by Venom. This again has that kind of wordiness, and sort of, it paints a very Bruegel-esque, Hieronymus Bosch kind of picture. All right, 7 churches down in hell, in the land where Satan fell. Vows of Satan's sacred scripts bring out the evil from its crypts. 7 churches, 7 priests, 7 hearts of which they feast. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Watch the gods take a revenge, rot in hell for your sins, sacrifice to the sky, terror strikes when you die. Taste the blood of the dead, and the sky turns to red. Rot in heaven, rot in hell, reach for the land from where he fell. 7 Bibles, 7 crosses, 7 saints mourn their losses. Now, as I've said before, this isn't... At the beginning of the album, lyrically, it's almost like it's night and day from what lyrics they're writing in the first maybe 1 or 2 tracks as they move towards the middle to the end. Tracks like Evil Warriors, 7 Churches is another cracking example. That first opening phrase, 7 churches down in hell, in the land where Satan fell. Vows of Satan's sacred scripts bring off the evil to their script from its crypts. 7 churches, 7 priests, 7 hearts on which they feast. Beautiful. Chef's kiss. It's sort of really, again, that Venom sound, that Venom lyric, and also, actually, I keep saying I shouldn't mention it, or Slayer, in fact. Sorry. Slayer, I don't think in the early days were as lyrically as adept as this track is, but certainly that kind of extremity. You can see where the bands merged and mixed and played. Exodus often had a darker side to it, certainly. Early Metallica sometimes had a dark side to it, more new wave of British heavy metal. But yeah, this great opening, a great title track. It's really, there's a middle section there, which is quite gallopy, quite stark and bleak, but very heavy and thunderous. It has it all on this track. It's everything that you've heard on the album so far, all mixed into one. And it crashes dramatically into Satan's curse. And how do you live up to a track like 7 Churches? It's a really difficult one to do on the album, and I feel for Satan's curse. I really do. So what does Satan's curse do? Well, it opens up with the most black, cold, Norwegian, tundra-like coldness in its cavernous kind of sound. There is a real, in the guitar solos, which they don't really have them in this album. It's more kind of just crazy guitar runs. But there's a sort of the trem picking on here goes almost into overdrive, like amphetamine speed, nuts, and it's a great way of backing up after 7 Churches. Hell, evil, Satan's curse, from the sky it falls. Metal burns my fucking brain, Satan's took the fall. Deceased men from hell and hatred, pollution to mankind. Antichrist, my son, from hell, I'll make you mine. You'll die, there's no limit, no run from hell. You lied, the witch has cast her spell. Your sins will be paid for and sacrificed. This is the price, Satan's curse. Sin, hate, eternal death, decayed my flesh I rot. Running below Satan's home, Lord of hell he's not. Lust for evil, son of hell, beneath the smoke I rise. Flames torch my body and sinners solar eyes. Just, again, these are young men writing these lyrics. Yeah, okay, you might say that some of it's point and click or by numbers, but it would be now. Yeah, it wasn't, I don't think, back then. Yes, Venom were doing things like that, but this sort of goes a little bit beyond what they were doing. And with the combination of the lyric and Jeff's vocals and that sort of cacophonous din that the rest of the band is making. This is a little bit different. Then we move on to Holy Hell as a follow-on from Satan's Curse. Again, same kind of guitar motif. We're not dipping in. There's no dip in intensity, speed, or noise. I mean, Jeff was saying in the interview that I did with him that, he wanted it from the moment you put it on to the moment you turn it over, just the extremity. And I think he gets that with this. If anything, from here, actually, there's a sort of melody, strangely enough. There's a kind of beauty in this particular cold track that follows on Holy Hell. I mean, lyrically, again, nothing's going on outrageous. There's some lovely highlights in the lyric. Endless dreams in the night, eternal sleep, eternal fright. Defile crosses, O black mass, Satan's reigns me at last. All of heaven, all of earth, you'll meet your God, chained to torment, chained to pain, like a dog. I mean, it's pretty dog. Nasty. Evil days and evil nights are black as death, hearts of sinners, hearts of stone, reaper's breath. See, when bands like this add a little bit of a rhyme on it and don't just go into the sort of strange rant, I actually find it more appealing, and I find it interesting that particular segment there, that just little tiny bit there, evil days, evil nights are black as death, hearts of sinners, hearts of stone, reaper's breath. I think that it's catchy. It's difficult to say that you want catchiness in this kind of music, but you sort of do because you need a little bit of something for the relief, a little bit of something for a hook, because it gets to the point where this album particularly is a good example that when it finishes, you realize there's no light and shade. There is no tonal difference. There is no up and down dip. There's no soft bell curve. You are sort of kicked in the seat of the pants the moment you put the needle down, and it doesn't stop until you lift it up. And it is quite, for a beginner, it's quite an arduous journey. For an experienced listeners like myself and a lot of you out there, this isn't that. This is pretty tame. But you imagine how this appeared and it came across in '85. So scary. I mean, it was banned in lots of countries. It was banned on on radio and all sorts of stuff. Not that bands like Possess got radio airplay. I mean, they weren't a singles band, but you know what I mean. The record stores refused to hold the record, to sell the record. It was just one of those. Again, the connection with the Pistols is so tightly wound with them in that way. In fact, same way. Yeah, interesting track. There is a melody on it. It is somewhere. It's quite beautiful. Trust me, it really is. And then we get Twisted Minds. Follows on from Olio again with the same kind of motif. I mentioned this before, and it sounds like a broken record. Broken record. No joking. It is what you get from it, okay? It is what it is. This one starts out, though, in a different kind of way. It's almost like a barrage of someone in a garage. Barrage in a garage. It's rhyming slang, isn't it? It's like someone who's just tuned their guitar up and is just running through some jamming rhythms before the song starts. And you think, oh, wow, I can actually take a slight breath here. I can take a slight breath, but not for long, because 10 seconds in, back to the barrage of extremity and speed. In fact, one of the fastest tracks on the album, Twisted Minds. Twisted my mind insane, ripping out your brain, you're slain, grieving the sunset terror, and your last breath is nearer. Revenge. Draining your soul out, bloodless, awaiting the final sentence, grasping your last piece of mind, slip into madness, our kind. Revenge. Life is strange, life was one big game, live or dead. Live or dead, it's all the same, hidden secrets inside my head. Decaying bodies, my blade is red. Obviously, this one is about serial killers and murderers. There was a great swathe of classic slasher movies in around that time period, and things like Nightmare in a Damaged Brain, Maniac, I Spit on Your Grave. It's not really a slasher movie, but sort of is. the classic Friday the 13th, The Burning. I could I could keep on naming them, My Bloody Valentine, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, there was a big slew of them, a slay of them. And so I think this is sort of about that kind of craziness of the killer outside the mind, the living outside his mind and looking in. There's a lyric here: mentally insane, maladjusted minds, lunacy within, evil twisted minds. Cast my wishes from the grave, below the earth, my body enslaved. Cults of people down in hell, skulls are splitting from their spell. So, it goes from the sort of madness of humanity to bringing it back to the devil. Rotting worlds are full of clones, sickening feeling inside my bones. Madness creeps upon my head up from behind, sanity is drained, my state of mind. So yeah, very much like Henry's Portrait of a Serial Killer, which came out a little bit later on. Of course, not around that time. I think it was about 89, 90, but I could be wrong there, for you horror film buffs. And then we have the penultimate track, Fallen Angel. Again, moving on with the same kind of concept: devil, darkness, the abyss, Beelzebub, all that kind of thing. It's getting to a point on the album now where it's too late to say I'm not quite sure what's going on, because you know exactly what's happening here. And Fallen Angel, as I said, it's the penultimate track. It's not a long track. It does, though, open the sluice gates almost for the very last track, which is death metal, which is the song that names the genre almost, if you know what I mean. This one, very much like one of the previous tracks there, actually has a moment for you to take a breath. Okay, it's got bells sounding, it's got atmosphere. It's actually one of the first tracks, probably the only track on the album, that actually has special effects, as in sound effects in the background. I might be wrong, maybe I've missed something, but it's the first one that's creating atmosphere without musical impact. This is sort of cold, wet, raining, damp, sad, fallen angel, right? And it's quite lovely for about 30 seconds, and then rabidness again, straight into the rabidness of one breath. It's like like a little kid taking the breath and holding his breath as long as he can. And at the end, when he's gone blue and let his air breath, he's bright red and he's panting. This is how it feels coming out the end of this track. Deceiving angel full of hate, outcasts will rebel. Below the crust, the dark kingdom, also known as hell. Fallen angel distrusts God, exiled down below. His burning lust of power all starts his own domain. Poisoned minds, evil plague, wicked shrines, where you beg, merciless angels fell. Soul won't rest into hell. Flames of fury burning hot, glowing in the eyes. Down below, forever rot until his soul can rise. So, yeah, fallen angel. We know the story about. You should all be aware that the devil, Lucifer, was an angel of God apparently, and then was cast out and fell to earth and became the devil, evil incarnate. So it's sort of the first time, I think, outside of probably The Exorcist, that is actually really using this kind of imagery again that's more obvious. Yeah, there was certain curse and seven churches, even warriors, burning hell, pentagram. They all have satanic imagery, but this one is almost again, I keep repeating myself. I wish I could think of a better way of saying it, but it's so much like War with Satan, black metal, and those albums. They're the sound that this comes from, of course, I feel, and it's where they're drawing the most influence from. And I could be wrong, but it's Welcome to Hell, so I was mentioned earlier, so I forgot that. Welcome to Hell as well. All first three Venom albums. This one feels probably the closest, along with, as I said, Burning in Hell, Pentagram. This feels that kind of way. And then we come to the very penultimate, the very final track, Death Metal. This one, it ends the album the way The Exorcist starts it. It takes your breath away. There is no chance to sit down and go, well, okay, we'll let this one trail out for us. This one's going to split your skull, and you're going to want it to do it over and over again. All right. If anyone remembers, who is like me, a huge Venom fan, sings along to black metal, the infamous and wonderful title track of that album by Venom. This is so much like that because the chorus is death metal, and it almost has the DNA of that particular track. Now, none of this that I'm saying is down. I'm not saying they're copying. I'm not saying that they're plagiarizing. It's just you can really hear the protoness, the influences. As this is as Venom changed things, so did Possessed, and they have very similar DNA. Arise from the dead and attack from the grave. The killing won't stop until the first light. We bring you to hell because we want to enslave. Soul will be frozen with fright. We break through the crust, leave from our crypts, protected by eternal life. Lay down the laws from our satanic scripts, bringing you nothing but strife. Another chef's kiss. And then it's death metal, death metal, death metal is the chorus. Okay, and of course goes on, ruling your cities, controlling your towns, and trapped in your worst nightmare, piercing your ears with horrible sound, casting my elusive stare. Lucifer laughs, his needs are fulfilled. The flames are now burning hot. Bodies are burning, the people are killed. Torture the reason we fought. Death metal, death metal. So you see the way, if you listen to black metal, the way that Jeff is actually rhythmically using those chorusal lines is almost identical. It's a beautiful homage to a very important recording in the extreme music scene, exactly the same as this is. It's really interesting. Do you think maybe he did it deliberately? Because when black metal, the track was released, I don't think Venom thought we're making a piece of music that's going to sound with the name of a genre, but maybe some unconsciously Jeff and the band were doing this because they were influenced by the way that black metal became a genre. So did they think that death metal would be the same? And so using the same rhythmic devices and motif and patterns and sort of direction, were they doing it subconsciously or not, or deliberately? Only you can make that decision. I think personally there was a bit of A and a bit of B in there. Anyway, what a brilliant way to end a fabulous and all-encompassing extreme album that changed the world. An album that you may yourself never even heard, or have heard, but it was a very long time ago. I'd say dust off your copies, stream wherever you can get it, and don't be too harsh on its lo-fi quality and its his sound, which is very similar throughout. As I said before, it's meant to be like that because it allows all the other motifs on top to flourish, and all the story and the direction and the textures and the speed and the aggression and the anger and the controversy to linger and play around, not worrying about where the music motif is going because it's already done it for you. It's written from the beginning to the end, and it just bubbles along underneath like a seething hatred that the album it talks about on many occasions. Anyway, that's I hope you enjoyed that. I really, really enjoyed this recording. I enjoyed getting back to the mic after some, tough week or so. This has been a real pleasure, a real sort of a real moment of joy for me to be able to talk about this album to my friends out there listening, new people that will be listening, and hopefully Jeff will be listening, and many hardcore fans of the band. If I've got things wrong, look, I apologize. If I have, you cannot determine how someone interprets something. So I've interpreted it that way, so that's how it is. You may interpret it differently. Anyway, enough from me, enough blither blather. I will see you next week. Keep safe, keep rocking, and remember, find this album, the original one if you can, and play it as loud as you possibly can. And also, between now and then, do head over to Heads for the Dead I'll listen to the couple of singles off of the album, but particularly go to their YouTube channel and also go to their Facebook page. I'll put the links below. The album comes out on Pulverized Records on the 10th of October, and it'll be on all good streaming platforms, and there are limited physical media available for pre-order, so get your orders in now before they run out. Anyway, bye for now, guys. See you next week.
In too many Chicago neighborhoods, access to fresh food is a luxury, not a given. Gardeneers is working to change that by supporting school garden programs that empower students to grow their own produce, learn about nutrition, and fight back against systemic food injustice. These aren't just gardens, they're pathways to health, education, and equity. Learn how you can help at gardeneers.org. Let's grow food justice in Chicago together.